Hi, Mikasa Tower neighbors. In this video, we're going to take a look at some utility data from January of 2022 through June of 2023. I want to make a few notes for you here about the utility data, just so that we're all on the same page. One, I am not an economist, accountant, or specialist in this area. I just compiled the data in spreadsheets, tried to make the data understandable. We can certainly take a look at it other ways if you would like. I'm also not making any recommendations. I'm just showing the known data. We, as a group, can figure out recommendations. Sources of the rates are at saukcity.net/utilities. They're also in your monthly utility bill. This data is just for utilities, electric, and water, so there's no sewer or gas involved in this, and these are only items used in the common areas. So this does not include your units, electric, water, sewer, and natural gas. You're going to pay for those separately. All of the data from 2022 is complete because the year is complete. For 2023, we only have data through June. And I'm going to break this down into three different parts. This first one is going to focus on a utility bill and what it says. I will also do a video on total costs since 2022. And we'll do another one on breakdown costs for building water, building electric, and pond electric. I can also make the raw data and formulas from a Google Sheet available to everybody if you want to dig into the numbers yourself. So in this first one, we're going to focus on reading the utility bill and just what do we have there to begin with. So in the utility bill that comes up, and again, yours will be similar, but not exactly the same. This is what the condo gets. And I'm going to drop down more to the middle of the bill, not the top of the bill, because then we can generalize and we'll get a little more specific. So our bill is going to be broken up into two parts, the electric one reading and the water only reading. Now, keep in mind, we actually have a second bill that is for the pond electric only. I'm going to look at just this first one that's about the condo. So the first four parts that are there tells us which meter we're talking about. Each meter is assigned a number. When was the previous reading, and when did they make the current reading? Now, I did this from the May bill. We have a June bill now, but this is when I had built this. Then after that, they have the previous reading that was read on the previous dates, and then what the current reading is. So if you were to take a look at the electric one reading, if you want to see how much we actually used, you would take 60,811, subtract 60,606. And in this case, you're going to get 205, and this is kilowatt hours. So 205 kilowatt hours. And then if you were to take the 21,236 and subtract 2759, you'd get 477. Now 477, you're going to see that right there. I mentioned 205 up here. You will not see that here. I'll explain why in a moment. There's a multiplier in here as well on the bill, and you're going to see there's a 20 that goes with the electric one reading, and this is only applicable to electric at this point. And for us, this is going to have to do with the fact that we have a three-phase electrical system. The pond has a one-phase, so they just have a multiplier of 1. I'll dig into that more in detail a bit later, but there is a multiplier. So if you take that difference of 205 here, multiplied by 20, that's going to get us that 4,100. So just so you know where that's coming from, you take the change in the meter, multiply it by the multi, and that gets your total usage. So this is 4,100 kilowatt hours, and this would be 47,700 gallons. And then the last part, demand and demand usage. This would come up with other billing models, but we don't use those billing models. So those don't really do much for us at this point. So what's important here is that usage and the meter affect other parts of the utility bill. So there's a lot that we have control over, and there's some things we don't have control over. So if we were to go up a little higher up on the utility bill, it breaks it down into specific parts for us. And there's really three parts for us. Your bill will have sewer and a couple of other different costs in there, but there are a lot of similarities. So it'll be broken up into an electric section. There's 4 parts to that. A water section, there's 4 parts to that, and then sales tax. And again, this is just the building bill for external water and building electricity. Pond has a totally separate bill. It's just electricity. There's no water with that one. And it does use a slightly different rate. For our purposes, I'm not going to talk sales tax. You can always adjust that as you need to. It is important to know that we have no shared sewer costs at all, even for our outdoor water. In your own unit, you'll have a sewer cost that is directly connected to your water cost, because the assumption is always whatever water you use, it has to go down the sewer. We have a water-only meter, so we're not getting double charged for our water. We also do have a small natural gas bill through Alliant Energy. It only lasts for a few months of the year, I would presume, for the garage heat, but that's it. So that is not included, but it's pretty minimal. And again, your personal utility bill has electric, water, sewer, refuse, street lighting, and tax. And then your natural gas is on a different bill, just so you understand the difference between the two. So if we look a little more specifically at, let's just look at the electric bill. You're going to see there's 4 parts to this. There is a general service electric one usage, and this is going to say 3-phase. And we'll talk about that in a moment because there's a difference between that one, your unit, and the pond. We have a general service public benefit charge, which everybody gets charged that. There's a general service electric base for the 3-phase electrical system we have. And then there's a general service 3-phase PCAC. And the PCAC, you'll notice more later how that affects everything. And again, the building is a 3-phase. The pond is going to follow a single phase. The single phase versus 3-phase, I had to do a lot of homework on this to figure out what this is. Essentially, what a 3-phase is it brings in a couple of more wires of voltage into the building so you can have more power. It actually lowers your amp, so you have less of an opportunity to spark. You can bring in more power without the danger. Essentially, my understanding is we have a 3-phase power system because of the elevator. I'm not so sure that we have any other uses, but that is where that's coming from. And that's also why the pond can be on a single phase and your units can be single phase. But for the whole building, we have to have the 3-phase. So if we look at the rates, which again, you get this every month in your utility bill, you can also look it up online. We are under general service. You would be under residential for your unit, but for general service. And you're going to see that there's a single phase charge or a 3-phase charge. That's just for your meter. And then there's an energy charge of about a dime per kilowatt hour. And then on the very bottom, it mentions that all electric rates are subject to a positive or negative purchase power cost adjustment. That's that PCAC. And you'll see that here in just a moment. The reason I'm showing you those is to show you that we have a lot of variability in our bill based on our usage and based on that PCAC number, which is going to change all the time. So the first number that's on there, that's that power cost adjustment clause. This is going to change every month based on public usage. And then this number is ultimately going to get multiplied by our kilowatt hour usage. In theory, or really what this is how much the village has to pay for electric. And if it goes above what they are already charging us, then they charge us the difference. In theory, if they ever used less energy in the village than what had already been purchased, we would actually get a discount. But looking at the data the last couple of years, that hasn't been happening because electric rates are high. The second column, then, that's kilowatt hours used, and that gets multiplied by different variables, just determine your total cost, and that's your final cost right there. Water is a little different. And again, we can take a look at the rates. This is always available. We have a standard meter cost of $17 because we have a 1-inch meter. And then everything else is based on the volume used. And you're going to see, I'll break this down here in just a little bit. But in our bill, we have our usage right here. We have a public fire charge. We have our water base, that's this meter, and then we have private fire protection. The reason I point all those out is that 3 of those costs are fixed and only 1 is variable, whereas electric, a lot of it was variable and very little of it was fixed. The first number, and this one I had to do a little digging to figure out how this worked. This is hundreds of gallons. So when it says the 477, it's hundreds of gallons. Because everything gets charged in thousands of gallons, anytime I talk about this, I'm going to change this slightly. So instead of talking hundreds of gallons, I'm going to talk thousands, which means I have to move the decimal point. So for calculation and consistency, think of that number as 47.7 thousand gallons, which is the same as 477 gallons. And then that's our total cost for water. So just to show how they come up with this total here of $136.05. And again, you can do this on your home bill as well. This is variable. Again, that number is 47,700 gallons or 47.7 thousand gallons, and we're going to focus on the 47.7 thousand. And again, if we look at those water rates, you'll see that they break it down based on the first 16,600 gallons, 16,700, and then 33,300. again, just to keep this in terms of thousands of gallons, here's another way to look at that. So instead of 16,600, I'm going to say 16.6 thousand gallons. And the reason is because when we get charged, it's per thousand gallons. Okay. So if you look at this, there's 16.6, 16.7, and 33.3. So we can't actually just take our bill and multiply 47.7 times any number because we get charged at different rates based on usage. So another way to think of our 47.7 thousand gallons that we used in May is we used 16.6 thousand gallons and 16.7 thousand gallons. And I picked those numbers because of these right here. And then we used an additional 14.4 thousand gallons. Why does that matter? Well, if we take a look at our May 23 water bill, for our first 16.6 thousand gallons, we get charged $3.03 for each of those. So that comes out to $50.298. Then our next 16.7 thousand gallons comes out to $47.595. And then that remaining 14.4 thousand gallons of water that we used gets charged at $2.65. So when we take all those totals and we add those up, and then you round, that adds up to $136.05, which is exactly what it says up on top of the bill. So there is a method to all this. You just have to do a little bit of breakdown of what the numbers are. So that's where our water bill comes from. So that's the basics of how to read it. And it's a little more complex, but it's not bad once you know it. I'm just going to finish this one by asking, what questions do you have? And we can certainly try to figure out any other ones that you have from there and try to find out any answers. Or if there's other data you'd like, let me know.